All right. Welcome, everybody, here to the Hilton, the Canopy Hilton here, also known as Campaign House for the week. Thank you to our gracious hosts here at the Hilton. We're going to have a little chat today about how Hilton is building a social-first brand for the modern traveler. We're going to talk for 25, 30 minutes, and then we're going to go back to having as many cocktails and past hors d'oeuvres as you want until, I think, 9 o'clock tonight. Before we start the session, I'll let my two lovely guests introduce themselves, so kick it off.
Hi, everyone. Rebecca Panico. I'm the Vice President of Global Media, Engagement, and Partnerships, and my team is responsible for leading our global media investment strategy, social and creator, and partnership strategy.
Hi, everybody. I'm Will Trowbridge, CEO and founder of the social first agency, Sailor.
All right, I should probably introduce myself for anybody who doesn't know me. I'm Jameson Fleming. I'm the editorial director here at Campaign and MM&M. All right, so we'll get right into it. This is going to be a fun conversation because we're not only going to just talk about how to be a social first brand, but we're also going to talk about the relationship between the agency and the brand, because I think we don't often get to have those conversations out in the open of how you first started working together, how you continue to work together, and how you've nurtured a relationship that has been, very fruitful for both the agency and the brand. So before we get into the overall social strategy, let's just start with, how did the relationship come to be? How did Sailor end up on the Hilton roster?
Back in 2023, we were, through a friend of mine, Dan Reynolds, who's actually in attendance tonight, we were engaged for a holiday campaign to cover an event at a Hilton, of course, talking about the transformation for the holiday season. We did that. It was a weekend project, very much a kind of singular focus of covering that holiday transformation, as well as, of course, surprising and delighting some guests in attendance with a free Hilton stay. It was very much treated as a one-off. We did it at a high level. We said thank you and talk to you soon. And now, over the course of the past 2 years, that small project has led to multiple different campaigns.
Yeah, I mean, every agency wants to get their foot in the door and do exactly what you did, which was drive this into a larger relationship. And so, Rebecca, what was the moment in the relationship in the first project, or maybe one of the subsequent projects, where you started to realize, like, oh wait, these guys might be able to do everything for social for me instead of just one-offs?
Yeah, I think it all started probably, back in 2023. We could see what Sailor could do from a social perspective. But then as we were starting to get into campaign work, we realized that we needed to find a partner who could help shepherd us into a modern media environment with social at the core. And Sailor, being this native social agency, we had brought them in on a particular campaign that was around, we were leaning into a sale campaign, very transactional, very, focused on driving commercial outcomes. And we were looking to find a way to turn this on its head, make it social first, and be really relevant and more emotionally connected to our audiences as we're thinking about building social communities for Hilton. And so we thought Sailor could be a really great partner to help us do that. We brought them in from the very beginning, and they were able to really help us think about that emotional connection on how to take something that can be very transactional in the marketplace and really be a native, social first, highly engaging campaign. And I think a result of that relationship, and you could probably get into a little bit more about how we did that, really started to transition our relationship into something that was less of a transactional partnership to something that was more evergreen and always on, to help continue to build the emotional connection with our audiences for our brands across the enterprise.
Yeah, I think just to jump in there, I agree. I think that kind of fall campaign that we did last year was kind of first of its kind for Sailor and Hilton, and we've now done numerous versions of that since. Yeah. I think at the core of that was a social insight. We led from a social perspective and tackled a very, like you said, transactional kind of strategy, and we're looking for an outcome that you would have approached differently without a social partner. But we started in social. We were building it specifically for Instagram and TikTok. We actually created that those pieces of advertising with social hooks up front. We really leaned into kind of like social first aesthetic, and of course paid it off with comedy and a call to action that felt really native to Hilton's core brand. We actually licensed TikTok trending audio. It was very much built for where audiences were going to fundamentally see it, and where we hoped they would be, trickling down the funnel and making that decision for purchase. And so that kind of set the foundation for the work to come. And obviously is now, we're using that strategy across the board for all things Hilton.
Yeah, and social is often thought of as a component of a campaign and not often the original idea of a campaign. And so how does that change? How did that change how Hilton thinks about brand building moving forward, knowing that you can start with social and that is how you work your way down through the rest of the work?
Yeah, it's critically important from our perspective that social is part of the conversation first and then work our way out from there. So we really lean in on social being at the center of our overarching marketing strategy to, again, build those communities, both in earning attention and building community with our audiences across social platforms, and then taking that idea and starting to make that bigger and bigger within other channels. And I think the way we think about social, historically it was that social was a great distribution engine. And what we really have learned is that from a travel perspective and for Hilton Hospitality to come to life, social is the center of that ecosystem. Social is where our audiences, any traveler turns to first and foremost to dream about their next stay. And so for Hilton, it's really critical that we continue to be in those platforms on a regular, everyday basis so that we can demonstrate what Hilton Hospitality is and continue to influence travelers to explore a Hilton stay and ultimately stay with us and experience it.
It's funny because I spend all my time on social to say this, but it's kind of crazy to imagine us not building for social first right now. From any brand's perspective, I think it's a lot easier to take something that is going to work on social and turn it into a TV spot than the other way around. And I think that is still something. It's amazing to work with a partner who fundamentally believes that, but I think it's still something that it takes some convincing in this industry. And I think that for us, that is the approach. If you want to simplify it, it's make sure it's going to perform on social, make sure the storytelling is entertaining, that it's going to fight to earn attention there. And then, of course, you can take that fundamental story and turn it into whatever you need to do it in more of a traditional media scenario.
Yeah, I mean, social is the best incubator of ideas, right? You can think of something super creative and put it out on the platform in a native to the platform way, see how audiences are reacting to it, and then that's how it starts to blossom into potentially a bigger idea. And I think this is some of the work that we've done with Sailor around that fall stay saves. We call it stay saves, and essentially it's, exploring and looking across the social space to identify people who have said, I had a fail. Something bad happened. I'm sure you've all experienced something terrible on a holiday, right? And what we've been able to do is come in and save that stay for you, and that creates so much goodwill. And what we're starting to do is now say, how can we take this nucleus of an idea and make it bigger and start to broaden it out, ensure that we're saying it in the voices of our 28 trading brands, being able to, increase the reach of that. But it all started from one central idea. It was born out of a social idea.
Yeah.
Will, you mentioned that sometimes it still needs convincing to kind of invert the structure of social first leads to the larger brand campaign. Hilton's obviously bought in, but when you look at other clients, what's kind of been that winning argument for a client to get them to realize, okay, maybe this is something we should actually do?
Well, I think that one perfect example is we will get briefed after a creative agency who's focused on a very traditional upper funnel storytelling asset, like brand film or commercial, video or whatever. After that's completely baked, after the strategy is completely done, they'll ask, and now what's everything else? And we are obviously working within the constrictions of the initial strategy that was built for a different platform to hopefully compel the same audience, because that's what the point of the entire campaign is to do. But the audience is all on social. So we're kind of essentially working with limited upstream kind of visibility. And what we do in those scenarios is we work our butt off to make the social outperform this more traditional pieces to show the value of it, and I think that those sort of conversations with clients and that sort of evidence and using the data to tell the story has been the most effective way for us to reverse that. At the end of the day, if it looks and feels authentic to the social feeds and it's authentic to the kind of social behaviors, it's going to outperform something that is a cut down of a linear spot.
Yeah, and listen, we were that client at one point in time, right? And I think through the transformational journey that we've been on to, again, make Hilton hospitality visible every day, and doing that within the platforms of choice and surfaces of choice that our customers and our stayers are engaging in, we now say, no, bring the idea. I don't want a campaign. I want an idea. And then the rest of it follows. So we don't look at video spots at all to begin with. We look at ideas. And to me, that's really transformed how we think about our go-to-market strategy, because now everything's anchored on a central core idea that can then be fit and built for purpose based on the channel in which you're looking to distribute that on. With our perspective, that means social first, and then everything follows. Yeah.
And I think that's just because of where the audiences we're trying to reach spend most of their time.
That's right.
Social is just a mechanism to reach the same audience you need to reach, no matter what sort of story you're trying to tell. Like, social is just fundamentally where people are spending the time, where they're actually talking to each other, where they're sharing things that mean things to, mean something to themselves. The idea, to your point, is paramount. It's not about, we need to make something for TikTok because that's the point. No, it's making something for people that ultimately can find value in our brand and our product. TikTok is just the method in which to reach them. So you, of course, need to speak the language of TikTok to create an incredible outcome there.
And I mean, one of the things with social is you can do these great brand campaigns every so often, but social never stops. Yeah. And so there's an always on mentality with social. So Rebecca, what kind of framework did you give Will in terms of what you needed out of them as a team to support the daily happenings on social? And then Will, how did you meet her needs and structure the team to give her what she wants or needs?
Yeah, I mean, I think we look at social in kind of 3 layers, or several layers, probably more than 3, but I'll try to neatly package it in 3, where there is the always-on storytelling that we put into market, and Sailor helps us power that by helping us build playbooks for the platforms in which we want to build communities on and communicate on, and that's an always-on evergreen strategy. Mm-hmm. It's, supporting our 28 trading brands, ensuring that they're voices are coming through within platform. And then we think about another layer of responsive work, and that's really around listening to the conversations that are happening on our platforms, responding in real time, and providing that value and demonstrating in real time that hospitality that we can offer to generate that goodwill and interest in what a stay could be when you come visit one of our properties, be it for a night, a month, a week, an hour, a cup of coffee. And then finally, it's around thinking around how do you become breakthrough, what's happening in culture, and how do we mine that information, listen really deeply to what people are talking about, and then we identify opportunities, be like, this is a moment that Hilton can really play in that conversation and insert ourselves into that discussion. So that's kind of the layers in which we think about it, and what we've really tasked Sailor to help us listen, have that ongoing conversation with our communities, and then be responsive and surprise and delight our audiences when appropriate.
Yeah, that fully covers it. I do think that from an agency perspective, like, those are 3 different work streams, all working to accomplish the same goal, which is fundamentally to drive awareness, conversation, and relevance around Hilton and all of its portfolio of brands. The reality is those three work streams do operate very differently from one another. That always-on social team is the meat and the potatoes of a full social retainer. These are the folks who are strategists, social media managers, community managers, designers, editors, producers, who are actually making that editorial calendar for each brand come to life every day. That's the work that you see that is driving awareness and meaning for people every day, whether or not you have a campaign in market or not. Then you have that responsive team, which is really all about speed. So you need to have a very close proximity from our sailor team to the social decision makers at Hilton. So we actually have kind of a writer's room style workflow where we're all in a teams together, pitching ideas on the fly, getting immediate feedback. It's not like a traditional creative review process. You actually have the writers in direct contact with the directors of brand at Hilton, and they are collaborating together and coming up with great ideas and executing them on the fly. And then that kind of like big bet framework, or the way we think about it, is like, breakthrough work is, of course, more opportunistic. You look at it through the lens of, is this the right moment? And then what's the right idea? And then you scale from there. So that idea might come out of the blue, and you might get it immediately, or it might actually take a little bit more time. So we have what we call proactive reactive, which is essentially means that you can anticipate a huge cultural conversation on social. So you plan for that eventuality so that you can be there in that moment and deliver something really impactful to harness that conversation and make it work really hard for Hilton. And those ideas could be really big, or it could be just a quick copy tweet, something in between.
Exactly. And I think at the center of all of that is the relationship between my social team and Will's team at Sailor, and also empowerment of the team. So we've built this freedom within a framework, essentially, where we have identified the overarching strategy, where the walls are of that framework, and then we let the teams essentially roll and cook and go. And it really is proving out to enable the teams to move at the pace that social requires.
Yeah. That's like trust. Trust is everything there. And I do think, to your point about like Hilton, Hilton is a very big organization doing this for as many of the trading brands as we're doing it. They all operate a little differently. Every one of these brands has its own unique brand within it. So you have to build trust at every level of the organization to be able to move at that pace. And that's something, honestly, we're still getting better at. It's like something where we're just figuring out how to do all those things at the highest level.
That's a perfect segue into the next question, which is this idea that Hilton is got this massive portfolio of hotel brands. And so when you think about all the different company, or all the different hotel brands that are part of Hilton across so many regions, so many audiences, are there core values at what makes a Hilton hotel that spreads across all the distinct lines that you have?
Yeah, I think we're grounded in the mission and vision that our founder laid in front of us, Conrad Hilton, and that's to spread the light and warmth of hospitality. And that's what Hilton has at its core, and we live and breathe that every day at Hilton. And so that's the center of it. Everything we do is then around the stay and Hilton for the stay. And so all of the work that we do is anchored on those two things, the vision of Hilton hospitality and ensuring that we demonstrate what the stay is and the power of the stay. That's what is pervasive across all of our trading brands. And then there's unique voices within each of our trading brands that comes to life in our social campaigns. And those are all, their version and their flair of the stay. So I think, though, when you look at and you pull back, we see kind of the service that Hilton brands provide, the space in which you reside in, this beautiful hotel here that, you can go grab a cup of coffee, and then also the innovation and, the pioneering spirit of Hilton. And so we try to think of those core tenets across all of our trading brands, but then allow, again, that freedom and the framework for each of our brands, their identity to come to life within those kind of core tenets. And that's something that we've briefed Sailor's, Will's team on at Sailor, so that as they're helping us build that evergreen, ongoing storytelling within our social channels, they have that framework, and then they have that framework, and they have the different brands kind of flair, if you will, and then they're working within that.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of, again, this layering effect to enable a portfolio strategy to sing, to give each of the trading brands the space in which they deserve, while also anchoring back to our core enterprise and portfolio approach.
Well, I'm curious with your employees. So, you've got people obviously on the Hilton account. Are certain employees specific to then certain brands within Hilton, or is it kind of a shared thing? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so like Rebecca mentioned, there's a number of different brands that we work across, and we've created pods so that we have essentially 3 pods per the Hilton kind of larger account, which ultimately service a subset of that portfolio each. So they're all very focused on their specific brands, executing against those very specific strategies and speaking that language inherently. So it's not expected that there is just one Hilton team to surface all of this portfolio of brands. At the end of the day, those brands need to remain distinct. We have to create real kind of extensions of the internal Hilton team at Sailor. So the expectation is those pods know those brands better than anybody and can really represent those in every forum, whether it's in that writer's room or in that more long-term editorial calendar work or in those big bet conversations.
Yeah, and they're partnering with our social strategy team, as well as our brand marketing team is at the table. So each of our brands have brand marketers that are in the writer's room talking with our social strategy team and Will's team to kind of create that 3-legged stool to ensure that all of the key stakeholders within our environment or within our organization have a voice in the conversation and what we're going to do next.
And just to speak to the kind of pod structure for other agencies in the room, like we have designers, art directors, editors, we have creators, very in-house creators working on that more responsive work, the stuff that needs to be, you see an insight, you come up with an idea, you make the thing, you get it approved, you publish it in a matter of hours sometimes. We have, of course, account representation in that room and then strategy as well. So there's the full kind of like agencies team in each one of those pods at a kind of partnership of this level. You need to make sure that everyone is really focused on their core priorities, and they're part of the larger whole for it to all work together well.
Yeah, and when we talked pre-can, I forget which one of you used the term flattened funnel, this idea of, the storytelling work that you're doing is supposed to be brand building, but also driving action in that moment. So explain more of how that strategy is actually put into practice.
I can start. I think when you think about a high consideration category like travel, and I think essentially we are always thinking and dreaming about our next trip while also researching the one that's a little closer and buying. So, I landed from my holiday, my vacation 2 weeks ago. I'm already thinking about my next vacation and where I'm going to go next and what I want to do. And I'm sure many of you feel the same way. So I think we're constantly in dreaming, shopping, deciding, booking, like in that cycle. And ultimately, there's a number of different touch points in which will influence you to ultimately purchase that stay. And so what we need to do fundamentally is ensure that we have, again, the layering effect. I'm going to keep going back to that. Always on storytelling, organic, earning the attention of our customers who are constantly thinking about where they're going to go next, what they're going to do, where they're going to stay. We need to get in front of those people as they are dreaming about that next stay. And that's what this always on engine is intended to do. Again, showcasing that Hilton's hospitality is better than any other travel brand out there, and also going to influence you to kind of then consider Hilton and consider Hilton for your next stay. And so you think about that along the way, and we think about structuring our campaigns in order to do that.
Yeah, and I think about it through the lens of also just social first. If it's born out of a social insight, if it's a great story, you can retrofit that for every sort of media plan, or whether it's an organic thing, or maybe it actually turns into a TV spot, whatever it may be. It's when I think about flattening the funnel, it's more about building for where culture happens and where people are spending their time daydreaming about their future vacation, so that when they are starting to consider that action, you come top of mind. And then, of course, from there, you see the story permeate through every sort of touch point thereafter.
So we've got time for about one more question here. So I want to address for brands in the room, or maybe agencies who something's clicking in their head listening to this and going, oh, hey, I think I have a client where this whole inverting social as the lead could work for us with a client. What's that first step or two that needs to happen to start to make that transition?
I'd love to hear your take, but I can tell you, you need to fundamentally think about where you as a human being are spending most of your time, and I bet it's on social. And I think you can ask yourself, who am I trying to reach? And I bet you the majority of them are spending the majority of their time on social. So it's actually like believing in, even if that's something you haven't personally as a marketing leader spent too much of your time getting to understand, it's about realizing that is where this industry is going and where people are going or have been. And it's an incredibly important thing to do as a brand, to show up in those spaces.
Yeah, my answer is probably fairly similar. I'd say break out of the box.
Yeah.
I think that measurement puts you in sometimes. And also follow where the eyeballs are, right? The eyeballs are transitioning to social, if not social first only. And if for any of you in the room who have children who are a teenager like mine, that is the place to reach people. And I follow the same behavior. So I could say, break out of the box, find people that you trust, take a risk, and you never know what could follow, because I think what we've found is our best work is incubated out of social. And that to me is a proving ground that that's the way to move forward in the future.
And it's like you can take a crawl, walk, run approach. You can start testing in kind of like low cost, potentially high impact areas. You can start thinking about your social voice and tone versus your brand, and how those things are different and how they're the same and how one complements the other. Or maybe one is a more kind of progressive take on the same idea, but think about it differently. I think your boss, the CMO, is going to be pretty excited if their campaign goes viral. Virality is a social behavior. So you need to think about social perhaps first to achieve that outcome.
Yes.
So it's kind of, I know we're making it seem simple. It's much harder than that to change an entire organization to be fully social and all those things. But I do think it's about time.
And it doesn't mean that those other distribution channels aren't important. They are. I think the thing I would say is don't start there. Yeah. Start where ideas generate and incubate, and then you scale, leveraging other platforms and channels, because certainly the world is very fragmented. People are using a lot of different media channels to receive entertaining content. Social is the first and foremost place in which people are going. And it's now becoming more than just a discovery engine. It's also a commerce engine. It's also search. It's a podcast, place to watch podcasts. I mean, it is where almost all media channels are now converging. And so I think the future needs to start from the social platforms, and they eventually will probably start to really become all media at some point.
All right, the perfect note to end on. Will, Rebecca, I'm Jameson. Before we head off to all the cocktails and past hors d'oeuvres, I just want to say thank you, everybody, for coming here tonight. We have exciting news on the campaign front for us. Next week, we've got a new team in place. So if you know Emmy Lederman, she's our new managing editor starting on Tuesday. So reach out to her on LinkedIn and give her a big congratulations. And then we've also promoted Cecilia Garzella up to deputy editor. So if you read us on the site, it's going to have some changes moving forward, and it's exciting. So reach out to them, congratulate them on LinkedIn. And thank you again, everybody, for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.